Today I would like to talk about character dialogue. Character dialogue is pretty essential. It's not one of those things that you can mess up, not if you want to have a decent story, because one of the worst things you can do is tell somebody what to think. You have to show somebody what to think. You have to show people what the characters are thinking, and the best way to do that is through dialogue, because if you get into that whole monologue thing, this is what the character thought, and that, it's just lazy. It's immersion breaking, it's lazy storytelling, and it's one of those things that, like, everybody, you can feel it. You don't even have to guess. It just feels wrong when a story is told like that, because it's implausible. It's not something you would see in your real life, in your everyday. I don't get to listen to the inner monologue, the person standing across the table from me. It's Friday, so everybody's going crazy. Just as an admin, the video I shot on Wednesday, I got hung up, it wouldn't export, so it's in purgatory. This morning, as I was riding in, trying to do the videos without the dark, the videos just seem to look better because I'm so beautiful. The dialogue in the book I was listening to did something that is fine on text, but as soon as you make your book into an audio version, it sounds really bad. Like, it's difficult and jarring to track, especially when it's the same person playing multiple characters in a chapter. Example, where this really kicked me in the teeth was a book, a very good book. I really enjoyed the story. Technically, the story was well written, but it was written. It wasn't crafted for an audio format. What I've started to do after I listened, it was like a 6-book series. Basically, a lost Roman legion fell into a different world during a storm or something like that, and they'd been on this continent with magic for so long that they're forgetting where they're from, but they knew they were legions, so there was some tie back to their history, but it was like lost in the crowds of history kind of thing, as this legion carved its way through this alien magical. But one of the difficulties listening to that written book that was read for Audible was that a lot of times the author was writing the book with his dialogue, and the dialogue was set in place with quotes, not descriptors, prefacing who was speaking. It was that punctuation joke, let's eat grandma. Depending upon where you put the comma, it's an entirely different conversation or declaration. When you take your text and you don't preface your dialogue with a description of who is speaking, when I tried to take my book, The Guardsman, and I copied and transferred the text into my documents to create video book versions, video book episodes and chapters, it came out really bad. Listening to it was very different from reading. Listening to the story, characters were speaking for quite some time in my voice as I was narrating on the book, and it was like, I don't understand who the hell these people are. I had to go back and rewrite like 900 pages of The Guardsman to correct all 3 books. That was an enormous undertaking. I literally had to rewrite almost 1,000 pages worth of the book because I was doing that quotes, dialogue, and then the character description at the end, which is grammatically okay in text, but it's a extremely confusing audibly. And when you're, a few weeks ago, I'd gone through that you want to deliver your content in as many different forms as possible. If you create your content where your dialogue is crafted only for text, and then you try to stick that text, that unmodified text, straight into an audio format, it's going to sound wrong. It's going to sound forced. It's going to sound confused. I listened to a book on the way in, and this author has done it a couple times. Typically, he's switching perspectives, and the narrator is shifting, which is cool. I like that effect. But within the chapters, as the characters speak to each other, sometimes he doesn't preface with who is speaking. And my ears are picking up on it. It's, okay, wait, I think that the text has changed. I don't know who's speaking now. So I have to it's jarring on the brain. You can just sit back and listen and just turn your brain off. But I tend to be more engaged when I'm listening because I want to track in the story and see how it's put together and things like that. If you want to create text, what I'm finding is that if I can offer description of what the character is doing while they are speaking, because not everybody just stands there and talks at each other. Oftentimes there's action involved while people are doing things, like you're walking along and you're doing this, that, and the other thing in the park, and you're talking to the other person. You're admiring the trees and you're listening to the birds chirp while the other person's talking, and you're cresting a romantic bridge or wherever your story is taking things. Those kinds of conversations don't happen in a vacuum, and allowing your text, your preface text, allowing your text to preface your character's speech allows you to describe the action that your characters are taking while they are speaking. For me, when an author does that, it's extremely engaging, because what happens is I can visualize the story. I can see the story happening as somebody is narrating it. And that's an important aspect for the craft of storytelling. And while something may be grammatically correct, when you're trying to create your work, your dialogue, so that it's acceptable and that it makes sense on multiple platforms, if you're conscious about the description and you preface every single time someone's about to speak, instead of opening with quotes, blah, 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 close quote, comma, close quote, Doug said, comma, or a period to end your sentence, or however you want to do it. If you set that introduction as a preface before someone has spoken, you can say in your dialogue, Doug was driving while he was talking and said, "It's a beautiful day out. I hope you're having a wonderful November." If the next line jumps immediately in and says, "Not only is November a wonderful month, but there's some great holidays coming up," comma, said Joe. When that conversation takes place on a written text, you will be able to see the closing quotes. But if you're transferring your text and your manuscript over to an audible format, an audio format, or a video format, the addition of the character Joe is jarring, because you go from November's a wonderful month to there's a lot of great holidays coming up, but you don't realize, oh crap, there's a Joe guy who's sitting in the car too, sitting next to the main character, and they're both talking back and forth about November. It's not just one person. So when you're presenting your audio work or your video work, by planning ahead and writing your pieces and parts so that you have a solid introduction, a solid preface to each character's speaking, you're going to wind up with a better result, because it's that Doug said it's a wonderful November. Joe replied, there's a lot of great holidays coming up. Now there's two people speaking, as opposed to one person who's just babbling like me. So, yesterday's video was long. This one I'm going to try to keep it a little bit shorter. Have a great weekend. I hope everybody's safe. We will probably do something like this tomorrow, but enjoy your day. Have a great weekend.